And I remember our bed headboard was near my dad's and mom's room. And you could tell when Dad was restless. I remember asking one night my mom, "What's the matter with Dad?" the next morning. And I remember our bed headboard was near my dad's and mom's room. And you could tell when Dad was restless. I remember asking one night my mom, "What's the matter with Dad?" the next morning.
What was the matter with Dad? What was the matter with your dad? Mom, why was Mommy sounding like that, Daddy? Well, Hazel, when two people love each other very, very much. Good morning! Joe, you were wondering what your parents were doing in the bedroom that night. Welcome to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. It's time to be excited. Be excited. It's Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. I'm happy you're here. I love seeing you guys. Good morning, pineapples. Whenever Relaxium McGroin comes in, I say to myself, Austin, you're doing something right. When I see the groin people, the Dan Bongino army, give it up for Dan Bongino. I'm like, all right. So they've decided to check us out over on the Wake Up America show, and now they've decided to kind of stay. It's nice to see you guys becoming regulars. This show is 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Draglaza. If you know, you know. It is big brain time. Drew Van Runkle, Dad Bod Baboon, Joni Rankin, The Very Relaxed Groin, Latrell, LW78, what up? Quest Fanning, and Cecilia H. You, the three of us, are going to be hanging out here very soon for the APDC Liberty Tour. The days are counting down. I'm so excited. It's our first time doing anything. Well, technically, okay, no, I lied. All right. I'm not an expert on me or anything like that, but maybe I should be. If you were going to meet me, if you're going to ask somebody about Austin Peterson, would you want them to have met Austin Peterson? If somebody had a very strong opinion about Austin Peterson, and let's say if this somebody who had a very strong opinion about Austin Peterson had never met Austin Peterson, but he wrote books and books and pages about Austin Peterson, and in all these books and pages, he spelled Austin Peterson, he spelled it Austin Peterson. Now ask me, would you say maybe that person shouldn't be considered an expert? Remember, never. Wouldn't you say it would be reasonable? Would it be reasonable? Would it be a reasonable thing for you to say, you should meet Austin Peterson, because that way you might be a little bit more informed than someone who had never met Austin Peterson. And let's say that all of their work, for the most part, sounded really good that they had written about Austin Peterson. But it's just that, dang it, every dang time they wrote about Austin Peterson, they spelled it Austin Peterson instead of Austin Peterson. And let me just ask you, would you think maybe that person isn't really an expert after all? Maybe they're retarded. And there are people out there and maybe this total retard has a legion of fans that think that they know everything, but their brains are so full of this is all they are, and they grow big and they create giant armies of retards, and all based upon what could have solved them in an evening and a reading of a few Ayn Rand books. When you consider that logic does not contradict logic, and that reason and logic are the basic tools, the building blocks of an ideology, of a philosophy. At least in my idea, at least in my view. But, the more and more I get older and the more I learn, and really what I'm trying to learn are the limits of my knowledge, and I do the best to share with you everything I can with understanding that I am not a lawyer, but I'm going to have a lawyer on the show today. So that's what I do. I speak to experts. Judge Napolitano, 8 a.m. today. You know what? The judge is an expert on constitutional law. And then you know what I'm going to do after that? Because we're going to be talking about tariffs and the economy. China got a 254% tariff increase. It's just, at this point, it's just mega cringe. And I got to speak to an expert. Spencer Hakimian will be here today. Big brains, big guests, bigger brains than I, on topics of which they are an expert. Now, if it was me and the judge and Spencer, how would we have a system of trade? If there were the three of us on an island, we couldn't trade with 300,000% tariffs on everybody, and it's just me, Spencer, and the judge. What are we going to do? Guess what? The judge is going to teach everybody constitutional laws. We establish our new society. Spencer is going to be the master of coin. He's going to take care of the finances of the island. And then what's Austin going to do? He's going to lead the karate school on the beach. Get everybody in shape, right? Weave his mix of American patriotic, Eastern Taoist, watercourse way of Asian philosophies combined with Western philosophies, with Western being in the superior half, being the male dominant, and the understanding of the things that the East gets right, despite the fact that the United States is the greatest country in the world. It's the greatest country in Africa. Africa, it's a country, right? I'm not an expert. I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions. Ugh. Read a book, read a goddamn book. It's Austin Peterson's Wake Up America show. Wednesdays are big brain time. So we're going to get big brain. Can I ask you a question? And give me an answer in the chat. Do you have a high external locus of control, or do you have a low external or low locus of control? What is Austin talking about? His locus of control. Do you believe that other outside forces acting outside of you are mostly responsible for the situations that you find in? Do you find yourself going to soothsayers? Do you often find yourself in the company of mystics or seers or psychics? Do you stop and give the tarot lady $45, or has inflation gone up? What is it, $75 these days, to tell your future? You might have a high external locus of control. If you find yourself looking for an expert to talk about things, and to talk about things at which they are experts in. And is this a subject that is laden with trip mines and claymores and, we're all shooting each other in this one? Yes, absolutely. And by the way, the nice thing about Michael Shermer, the author of this book, Conspiracy, Why the Rational Believe the Irrational. The nice thing about this is he talks about the times the anti-conspiracy theorists get it right? He talks about what is the type of error that you might make in your thinking. Because this is the pain, this is the path of pain. This is the path of intellectual suffering. Because I think even the Bible says that knowledge, with wisdom comes suffering, right? I'm not sure. What did the ancient Jews say? Someone get me my Bible where it talks about knowledge and the pain that it brings. But how would we build an advanced society? Imagine if we didn't have an income tax. Can you imagine? Did you see how much money Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is raising for president? Don't do it. Don't do it, America. We felt like we had this big win. I mean, people are still kind of coasting on fumes since the inauguration. I got to tell you, I'm not trying to be negative Nancy here. You know me. I'm not a black pill guy. I'm a white pill guy. But the fact of the matter is that, listen, we had to put up with 8 years of Obama. I cannot take 8 years of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. No, don't do this to us. Thank you, Norm. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. We're so glad to have all of our friends join us on this show, even when they're confused, like Drew Van Ronkel. I'm confused where this is going. It's trust me, it's all building up to something. We've got a story today that we're going to talk about, which tickles my timbers. It's a funny story. At its root, you might think that, oh, a story like this, should it be more of a tabloid story? But when you read it in the Wall Street Journal, you have to say, okay, well, I guess today we're talking about Elon Musk's harem. Yikes. But before we do, Visit forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. The bonus content today is so good. It is so stinking good. You must unlock the bonus content. You must. You will miss out. Today's bonus content is spectacular. Especially, I know Drew Van Runkle's going to love it. All we got to do is either raise $75 in Rumble rants, which inflation, it used to be $50, but I was like, oh, we're doing a little too easy. You know, we got to work hard you got to fight for your cash. So $75 raised by the end of the show. What does that do for you? It does a lot. You get to see our awesome 5-minute mini documentary about a news story that we wouldn't have had time to cover on this show. And since we would have commercials to go to my guests anyway, rather than watch the commercial break, you get to watch an awesome Lego style animation of our story of the day, which is in our mini documentary. And the cool thing is I've been sharing them. You see, when you unlock them, you're helping everybody. You're sort of like making it available to the public, because we delete it if it doesn't, because we want that FOMO. You know what I'm saying? Once you have that FOMO, because we'll delete it if we don't unlock it. And we've definitely not unlocked like maybe 2 or 3 times since we started this program, but it's also been a huge hit for us. So look at those beautiful boxes of Founding Flavors coffee. Those could be your milk. My milk could be your milk. Your milk will never be our milk. Okay, thank you, Billy. Founding Flavors coffee at forlibertyshop.com. If you've got a little patriot in your life, a tiny patriot, perhaps you want to plant the seeds. Introduce them to one of our most libertarian presidents, certainly our most conservative president, Calvin the Coolest President. Is our children's book, and we're super excited about the reception that we've had from it, because people really just don't know a lot about Calvin Coolidge. And I think that begins with the time when you're a child is when your mind is really most open. And to be introduced to someone who was very important to American history and whose tradition and reign of thought has wended its way down from the roaring 1920s into the, God, can we please have some roaring in these 2020s? Please roar. And I want to hear you roar. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. We're so glad to have all of our friends joining us in the chat, because when they do, they click the like button. When they're live here with us on Rumble, they click the like button, they support the show. They make liberty happen, because, quite frankly, a lot of what you guys have been doing with the show, it's really, gotten us to where we are in the public eye. I mean, I'll tell you, this is just a little behind the scene thing, and then we're going to move on to the news. I'm going to tell you this little behind the scene thing, but Fox doesn't want to advertise against itself. When I was on the radio, for example, we would try not to advertise against, our own sponsors, products. If we had a sponsor, we wouldn't you wouldn't always take money from a sponsor if you sold the product, right? For example, coffee. When I used to work for Zimmer, they sell their own coffee, so they, of course, they wanted to not advertise against it. But when Fox, without prompting for me, just introduced me as the host of Wake Up America with Austin Peterson and former Libertarian presidential candidate, that was a sign of respect. Because, again, you wouldn't do that. Normally they'd say, oh, he's just a pundit. Let's just put him in the corner and we'll say he's a analyst or something like that. That's how they kind of treat you. It's just what it is. It's how the industry works. I mean, I didn't have to tell them. I didn't have to pressure them or anything. They just came to me of my own volition, did me a full segment, gave me the full honors. Beautiful segment, 5 minutes. I got to knock it out of the park, hit a home run, and probably get introduced to several new people in the chat. Might be hanging out in the background. If you're new from the Fox interview, welcome. We get historical here. We like to hype it up. We love liberty. We love America. Donald Trump, when he's right and when he's wrong, we got to call it out, because we are American. We want integrity. When this election's over and Alexander Ocasio-Cortez is gifted power because 254% tariffs on people's tchotchkes, which is just too much for them. And don't underestimate the power of the Americans to not be able to feel pain. The Chinese are willing to induce pain on their people. Their government will, the United States government willfully and malevolently does pain to American citizens. The Chinese government does too, but not in the same ways. And they don't have the same tools to fight back that we do. We have tools against tyranny here. We call them freedom seeds, and they've been planted all across the country. America has the most freedom of any country in the world. China's people just don't have that. So the nice thing about living in the United States is that despite the tyranny of COVID, despite the tyranny of the economic centralization of economic planning in this country, which I am totally opposed to, we are still far more free in the United States than those who live in China. It used to be that you couldn't get disappeared across national borders in the United States, but they're illegal aliens. Illegal aliens. They're not going to come for us. They're not going to come for American citizens. Except some people are saying we should come for American citizens. Yeah, I'm a little nervous about this whole idea that we take people and just. I know. Yesterday I was talking to Brad, and he's like, there's immigration is a big story. And I'm like, just avoid it. Americans just aren't ready for these kinds of conversations right now. And I was just like, we've got so many other stories we've got to cover, more things that we're an expert in. The fact of the matter is that if you don't want to chop illegal immigrant babies into fillets through the razor wire, you're just done. And I just said, some battles just aren't worth picking. You have to pick your battles, and you have to say, what is it that we can realistically accomplish? Because I'll just say it honestly, the libertarian movement in this country it's not dead, but it's on life support. And that's why I'm just so thankful for Argentina and for Javier Milei, that there is somewhere in the world that there is a big, bright, shining star down south in South America. I still talk to people, Americans, good patriotic Americans who love their country, and, maybe they're not as connected as you or I when it comes to politics. And I'm like explaining Javier Milei, okay? Javier Milei, and I explain, they're like, oh yeah, the guy from that country, he's kind of crazy. I was like, oh my God. You have to understand, we're nerds. Liberty is a passion project for me, of course, and for many others. And it is frustrating, right? When you're like, okay, guys, so many Americans are still in the matrix, right? They're still you call them normies for sure, and you get it. And it's like, listen, you're not trying to sound like an elitist, arrogant piece of crap, but some things you're an expert on. So it can be frustrating, especially when you fear the loss of liberty for your fellow Americans. Like, you hate to see it go down, right? It's like, keep fighting. I saw somebody tweet at me the other day. They were like, Austin, we can't let liberty lose. We just can't. And I'm just like, bud, you get that feeling that you want to go in the woods and just like disappear. You know what I'm saying? The masculine urge to become a prepper. Speaking of preppers, what a perfect segue. Our sponsor today, My Patriot Supply. Check out the link pinned in the chat over at rumble.com/AP4Liberty. My Patriot Supply has emergency food supply and emergency generators, which have solar power generators. Go check them out. Tell me what you think of their product line. Use the link in the chat. Linked at the top. It's the one pinned comment. So click on that one for me. That's our affiliate program from that. We only get paid if you decide to purchase. So if you'd like to support the Wake of America show, you can do that. That's me advertising, not against myself, because I don't sell generators or emergency food packs, our For Liberty shop, but I can't count that as the bonus content, guys. If you do spend money over there, just FYI, because I have a affiliate deal with them, but it's a great company and they're very popular. And if you haven't seen them before, check them out at the link in my profile. That's My Patriot Supply. Because I'll tell you what, it was the preppers who got COVID-19 right. Preppers. The preppers got COVID-19 right. I mean, who else? Right? Everybody's stacking up on toilet paper, 3-4 miles deep trying to buy the toilet paper. Austin, did you say miles dick? What did you say? The preppers won COVID by a country mile. Andy Opperman says, liberty is the commission by the architect of the universe to those who would do good. A more noble mission cannot be found. Is this some pagan thing? If so, I'm in. Amy J.E. says, anyone use founding flavors for cold brew? I haven't tried cold brew with it yet. Ooh, that's a good idea. But I got my espresso machine, and I'm so excited for once I finish my current bag, I'm getting ready to crack into my dark roast, my Adams's Patriotic Perk. For that, they say that the dark roasts are really the best for espresso, even if they're the lightest in terms of caffeine, because I'm going to be real with you. Like, when you're doing espresso anyway, you probably don't really need to go max Jeffersonian Java. But the Adams's Patriotic Perk Dark Roast, I haven't cracked into it yet with my espresso machine. I'm so friggin' excited. But I do think that it is the dark roasts that you go, if you go for some of those fancier coffee drinks. The lighter roasts are going to be more jazzed up. They're going to be more caffeinated because they don't roast the beans for as long. So I learned a lot working in the coffee business now for a couple of years, and Jeffersonian Java is our number one seller. It's been exciting learning about it, terrifying with all of the tariffs, the terrifying tariffs. Where do you guys think that stuff comes from? Colombia. Colombian single origin means single origin Colombia. Don't tariff my coffee, gosh darn it. We'll talk to Spencer Hakimian this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time about tariffs, the economy, the new 254% tariff on China. I don't know if you guys know where a lot of this electronics come from, but there's a reason I'm able to produce this show inexpensively and be able to afford to do this for you guys. But NVIDIA, no. All right, check the Wall Street Journal. Our friend Drew Van Ronkel, he dropped $1. I think I saw a few other donations. I haven't been counting. I saw Andy did like 21, and then I want to keep the bonus total up for you guys. We do have a million billion clips to play, and I want you guys to be able to see the bonus content instead of the commercials, so it's awesome. I want to make sure they're there. 25, 26, 27. Okay, $28 towards a $75 goal. That's amazing. That's amazing, honestly. Keep it up, guys. We'll definitely get there by the end of the show.
Yeah, we'll focus in on independents here, and independents feel that Donald Trump has vacated the center of the electorate, catering to his base. What are we talking about? Well, let's talk about the overall net approval ratings. We're going to look at the worst ever at this point in a presidency. The old record among independents for the worst ever was Donald Trump back in 2016, a net approval rating of minus 16 points. Well, Donald Trump has broken his own record here. He now holds, in this particular term, the worst ever net approval rating at this point in a presidency among independents at, get this, minus 22 points. He is 22 points underwater with independents. That breaks the old record that belonged to Trump. He has set the new record. He is completely underwater with the center of the electorate, Kate Ball.
And this is overall. This
Yes.
is on all the issues. Now, focusing specifically on the economy.
Yeah, let's focus in on the economy, right? What is driving this overall approval rating for Donald Trump among independents to go underwater? Let's take a look at the economy, and let's take a look at Trump's net approval rating on it, and look at the trend line over just the last few months. You go back to January, he was slightly above water with independents at plus 1 point. Look at this drop, Kate. Oh, my. Minus 29 points. That's a 30-point drop in under 3 months of time. What independents are hearing from Donald Trump, they hate. They hate what they're hearing from Donald Trump, and they are abandoning him in record numbers. At this point in his last presidency, he was about at 0 points in terms of his net approval rating on the economy, and now he's at minus 29 points. You go back through the record books, I simply put, Kate Baldwin, can't find anything close to this.
Andy Opperman over in the chat makes a good point. He says that polls probably don't concern Trump much, being his second term. Completely agree. But I think of what you have to consider is that Trump sort of takes the Republican Party with him, because the Republican Party by itself without Trump, it doesn't really have any popularity. And so when you talk about independence, you're kind of talking about the political center. And this always happens. This is kind of like a natural ebb and flow in terms of exuberance, which is why, you know, to quote Alan Greenspan, Fed chair, there may have been some irrational exuberance in the victory of last fall, and maybe a misreading of the direction the country might actually be going. Again, when you see the fundraising numbers from someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I mean, it's quite clear that she's being groomed for the future of the party. She's just antagonistic enough with the Democratic establishment that she can hold on to that progressive base while also being able to fit in, wear the $800 pantsuits and, you know, go to the Met Gala and do all that stuff as an elite member of the Democratic Party. So keep an eye, watch out for your left, because while we deal with the issues presented in our time, and as the Trump administration deals with the issues that they're faced with, for better or for worse, we will need to be ready for the eventual attack coming back from our left flank. The left, DEI, diversity, equity, society, governance, they bought into everything. There's no detaching the parasite that has been attached to the host. You can't remove the parasite without killing the host on the Democratic side. They have been infected completely and totally by the woke mind virus. The Democratic Party, it is now to some degree, while it's parasitic, it is also to some degree symbiotic, right? But eventually, of course, it does kill the host, right? It's like AIDS or some disease that you might be able to put off for some time, but is which showing signs of stress or distress. And of course, distrust from the American people is how that is expressed. But if you consider how the Democratic Party must strategize themselves going forward, it makes perfect sense that they find a young Latina progressive woman as the future Evita Perón in the United States, right? The United States, so strangely, the more I'm learning about Argentina, we are headed more towards the Perón style of government. My friends in Argentina are telling us as they're enjoying victory after liberty victory after liberty victory. And don't get me wrong, it can be an apples to apples or apples to oranges comparison between the United States and Argentina. But they're chalking up victory after victory after victory. And my Argentine friends are telling me, Austin, why are you doing this? Like, you are our inspiration for liberty. The United States, it was the end of the world. I mean, I hear these young people talking smack about Ronald Reagan, and on one extent, like, I get it, the guns and, immigration, and I understand why, certain younger generations, would, I think, not understand Ronald Reagan. It's kind of almost a situation where you had to be there, I guess, right? And maybe it's, can you go back to Nazi Germany and have an opinion on Nazi Germany? Well, you can't go back to Nazi Germany, but you can have an opinion on Nazi Germany. But if you didn't live through the 1980s, you might underestimate the threat of Soviet communism and how it presented its threat to our daily life and our values, and the type of subterfuge that was going on during the Cold War in the United States, spies, saboteurs. China wasn't really a thing yet in terms of like dominance or rivalry with the United States in any way. It was Russia. And so Ronald Reagan was the man for the hour, the man for the plan. Now, I think Trump in many ways was the man for the hour in last fall's election. That's why I supported him, I campaigned for him. But I didn't surrender in one election, like the entire agenda that I've been fighting for. People who are new, especially to politics, they will come along, they will try and get you surrender everything. No, throw all that aside. I have literally had people tell me, you can join whatever group of like new like base kids or something like that is, but you got to leave your libertarian ideas behind. You got to leave all of those libertarian ideas behind. They say things like that, right? And it's tempting. You can make so much money. You can grow powerful, and that power you can use it to gain more money. And if money is your thing, they'll give you money. If women is your thing, you can have women, boys. I mean, Madison Cawthorn, remember that congressman in the wheelchair who got ejected from Congress? They ran him out on the rail because he exposed the Republican cocaine orgies. And all along, I was just always saying, this is just Tuesday in Washington, D.C., right? It is Game of Thrones. It is House of Cards. Right? Sometimes I felt like it was a little bit tame watching the, attempt at hyperbolic power-mongering Machiavellianism of the Netflix specials of the last 10, 15, 20 years and, HBO. It is a metaphor for it. And so Madison Cawthorn gets primaried like crazy by the Republican establishment to get him to shut up. Because he let one little thing slip. I mean, you had to know. It had to be at least Mitch McConnell level power in the D.C. area or above for something like that to happen. Because, I mean, if you've never seen a surgical strike, I mean, taking Madison Cawthorn out of Congress was a surgical strike. They found his college nudes. they found, and he's disabled. Poor guy. I don't always agree with Madison. I don't know. I just kind of like him. I don't know how to explain it. Not everything has to be, foretold in a libertarian tone. I just get a good feeling about him. That speaks volumes about the intelligence of the average voter. McConnell's constituency are happy with his performance. Pelosi, Schumer, Warren, these people spent decades gutting the country to enrich themselves. No, it's true, absolutely. But the public is fickle. The public is, their whims move, blow with the wind, left and right. They have no center, right? They have no grounding. And so they just move wherever they feel. If they see a shiny object, they're going to follow it. What are you doing? Huh? What are you saying, Joe? Oh, okay. I guess maybe he couldn't hear that there was this loud music over the top of him. Did anybody notice that? Mr. President. Couldn't hear you, bud. For once, the sound was not my fault.
Got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Why are these guys taking aim at Social Security now? Well, they're following that old line from tech startups. The quote is, move fast, break things.
Yes.
They're certainly breaking things. They're shooting first and aiming later. As a result, is a lot of needless pain and sleepless nights. My friend Governor O'Malley knows what they're really up to. He says, and I love his quote, they want to wreck it so they can rob it. They want to wreck it so they can rob it.
Hey, that's our job. We wreck it and we rob it. Nobody's going to take that job but us.
And the physical, it's a big deal. We talk about what happened in the physical side of it if we didn't have Social Security. Think of what the psychic calm gives so many people who just don't know where to go, don't know how to traverse what needs to be done, or alone. Last fall on the White House lawn, we celebrated the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
What? Excuse me?
And to make sure benefits are going to people who actually they belong to. By the way, those 300-year-old folk getting that Social Security, I want to meet them because I like to figure out how they live that. Hell of a thing, man. I'm looking for longevity because it's hell when you turn 40 years old. Please.
Oh, I get there's still a little bit of the man in there. Can you see him?
And I'd never seen hardly any black people in Scranton at the time and I was only going in fourth grade. And I remember seeing the kids going by at the time called colored kids on a bus going by.
Oh boy, colored kids. Oh no. Oh no. Joe, don't you know? It's not colored kids anymore. It's kids of color. Kids of color. People of color. POCs. You cannot say colored people. Shiny colored people holding. Shiny colored people holding. Shiny colored people. Blame it on the ground. People, people.
My first reaction when seeing former President Biden was speaking tonight was I'm shocked that he is speaking at nighttime. I thought his bedtime was much earlier than his speech tonight. I understand the topic of his speech will be Social Security. Let me make it very clear ahead of former President Biden's remarks. President Trump, is absolutely certain about protecting Social Security benefits for law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens and seniors who have paid into this program. He will always protect that program. He campaigned on it, he protected it in his first term, and he's back again to continue protecting.
You know, if we had, back when George W. Bush first introduced this idea, if we had privatized Social Security back when George W. Bush was campaigning on it and talking about it openly, and it was like, it wasn't that controversial, the seniors would have a lot more money now. They would have lost it in the crash. Yeah, there would have been a small group of people who, like, right in that small little window period of time, may have not been able to retire immediately. But overall, in general, just tracking the S&P 500 from George W. Bush until today, seniors' retirements would be a mint. Why didn't we do it? Why didn't we do it? Why don't we do it? Guys, it's time for us to be brave. Do not give in to evil, but proceed ever more boldly against it. To fight more bravely for the ideals of individualism and individual liberty and economic freedom, personal liberty, right? It's time more than ever for people to stand up for our rights. I don't know how to say it more plainly, other than I fear for a loss of rights and freedoms that our ancestors will have enjoyed that we will not enjoy. And I just cannot bear the thought of the greatness of the founding fathers leaving to us and to our posterity, right? Posterity, of the men who planted the trees, in whom their shade they shall not rest. That we, the young men, the new generation of society, would give up such a gift that was given to us and is our birthright. It is our birthright. And I would hate to see Americans give that up to a Latina socialist and a woke, parasitical, mind virus infected cult of social democrats, social progressives, socialists, and communists. I'm sorry, no offense.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
We must fight back against the centralization of American society, and our economic planning should be dispersed, not centralized. We're going to speak to a man who knows a thing or two about that at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. 8:30 a.m. Central Time. We'd be glad to have you be a regular guest, even though Will Run Riot says, I've been trying not to watch so much political content lately. He gets his fix with me, 8 p.m. in the morning. Well, thank you, Will. Get your fix on Route 66. Have you guys heard the radio commercials with Sean Spicer talking about Medicaid not going anywhere? Asks Amy. I have not, but that is probably because when I listen to the radio, I'm listening to something with a nice, sweet, sexy beat. Oh, yeah. Something like...
As you probably know, we're doing a self-deportation. And we're going to make it comfortable for people. And we're going to work with those people to come back into our country legally.
¿Está
¿Está
funcionando la autodeportación?
Well, we're starting it. We haven't started it right now. We're getting the murderers out. We have our total aim on the very bad ones, as you can imagine, because you have some great people that came in. But we have some very bad ones. We had 11,088 murderers. Half of them killed more than one person. These are rough, bad people. We want them out. And that's mostly our focus.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is we're going to have a self-deportation program, which we haven't even announced yet. I guess I'm announcing it to you. Why not, Rachel? Here it is. The only thing I haven't determined is what are we going to do? We're going to give them a stipend. We're going to give them some money and a plane ticket. And then we're going to work with them. If they're good, if we want them back in, we're going to work with them to get them back in as quickly as we can.
Interesting. And to a Spanish language network, Trump anuncia nuevo programa de autodeportación en camino. Terrible. I took French. I didn't take Spanish in high school. S'il vous plaît. Oh, je m'appelle. Qu'est-ce que tu voudrais? Je voudrais. C'est le fromage dans mon pantalon. Ouais. C'est le fromage dans ton pantalon. Hence the mustache. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. So I like how he's like, he kind of talks tough on immigration, but then when he goes on the Spanish language channel, he takes a little bit softer tone there. Did anybody notice when it comes to immigration and deportation? What do you think about that? Did you know that you can text the show at 573-319-1586? That text line, again, 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear your thoughts today on the Wake Up America show, and you can send us a text at 573-319-1586. I added a new soundboard today, or I guess a new old soundboard, to try and fix some of the audio issues that we've been having with like doubling up of clips, and now they're saying the clips are a little low volume. So if they are still low volume, I'm hearing them very loudly in my ear. So I guess the monitor that you guys are hearing is a little different than mine. So if they do not improve, feel free to yell at me. And somebody did. Somebody texted me at 573-319-1586. I've got, 150 plates spinning while I do this show live, and I'm like watching the internet speed, hoping it doesn't just crash and die in the middle of the show, which it sometimes is wont to do. Hopefully it won't happen when Judge Napolitano joins us live in 15 minutes. We're going to speak to the judge this morning about this immigration question and the Maryland man that Democrats are demanding be returned to the United States. Trump is in a showdown with the courts. Again, of course, this time for many of his executive actions and executive orders. But what is Congress doing? Jack squat, not their jobs, that's for sure. They're running for they're pre-campaigning for president, many of them. Congress asleep at the switch. You know what they're doing? The Republicans in Congress have been fighting over the last few weeks about allowing proxy voting because the women of Congress, the younger women of Congress, have decided that child care is such an important priority that it paralyzed the Congress, and precious time was lost to get the, quote, big, beautiful bill across the finish line in order for us to avoid shutdowns and to fund the government to keep the theft and rapine of the American people and the world continuing. I see a lot of I see a lot of Dan Bongino supporters. I see a lot of people out there who are starting to say, hold them accountable. They're angry that what's been going on in the FBI? How's the ATF doing? What's been going on with the Department of Justice? Where are the arrests? Lock her up. Lock her up. I mean, there are people who did unspeakable crimes in the name of trying to take down Donald Trump. Does he have any friends telling him in the Oval Office, hey, listen, you got a bunch of people who committed actionable crimes in trying to prevent you from lawfully seeking elected office? And punitive trials Trump has had to endure, making him a felon. And where's the fight? I mean, the deportations are not at the numbers we want, right? They are deporting violent gang members, some of them, but what does due process look like to this administration? We're going to talk to Judge Andrew Napolitano about that. They said a few weeks ago, Dan Bongino came out and said, he says, give us a little bit of time. He's like, this is a lot bigger problem than we expected, right? He got inside. I mean, they're battling the deep state. I get it. Many of them are heroes and patriots, right? But you got to understand how the deep state operates and there are traps. It's sort of like if you've ever watched a documentary about the taking of Okinawa. A lot of great books. Read about Okinawa. This is where my Japanese karate comes from, so it's why I'm kind of fascinated with the history of Okinawa. And I do want to go there someday. I made it to Japan, but I wasn't able to get to Okinawa. I want to scuba dive with whale sharks in Okinawa one day. It's one of my bucket list items. But the Battle of Okinawa, they didn't face any opposition coming onto shore, the Marines. The Marines came onto shore and were like, oh, wow, we thought we were going to have to fight them on the beaches like we had in, Saipan and I think Marianas and Guadalcanal. They thought that they were going to have to, have these difficult landings. Well, no. So we're talking Okinawa now. We're talking what the Japanese see as Japan. And so there was going to be a fight. But when the Marines came inland, it was all quiet. Well, and the opposing general had told his troops to wait. And because of the nature of the cliffs of Okinawa, and as it drops off into the ocean, the nature of they have these huge canyons. And they waited for the Marines to go down into these deep canyons with these high walls on the side of them. And then the Okinawan, the Japanese resistance in Okinawa would wait for the Marines to cross and walk past them. So the Marines would have their backs to the opponents who would be up high in the cliffs with a perfect vantage point position down on the Marines. and that's when they waited for their attack. So there are traps, redoubts, there are pitfalls, there are rabbit holes that they can chase rabbits down. So I do sympathize with the administration to the extent that what they are fighting, the battle that they are fighting in some extent, is damn near unwinnable. And honestly, I have to wonder that if the Trump administration can't pull off many of the Doge cuts and if they can't pull that off and actually get spending cuts across the line, I mean, what hope do future administrations without balls? Because let's be real, how many Republicans really have any balls compared to Donald Trump and his team? That's why Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party right now, because he's the only one with a pair of gonads. For better or for worse. Am I talking sense to any of you? Is this making perfect sense? Click the like button, and if you enjoy it, click follow. If today is the first time, 573-319-1586. Yes, the Epstein list, Cecilia. Thank you very much. Exactly. Where are we at on that bonus content? Looks like we're right around, wow, we're doing pretty good, actually. I think it's like $38 to $40 we've raised towards the $75 goal, guys. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. And, of course, visit forlibertyshop.com. And if you haven't stocked up on coffee, just sign up for a monthly subscription to the coffee. That puts you on our 20% discount list. If you are a supporter of the Wake Up America show already, For Liberty Shop, just an FYI caveat, I don't want you guys to be mad at me later, but because the profit margins on the coffee specifically are so tight, our general store discount applies to everything but the coffee. So don't be mad, but that's the only way we can make any money on this, because we for us, coffee is not like, oh, we're going to get rich off coffee. Not at this level. It's really for us is for a way to get you guys to buy at the shop and get used to it, maybe be able to send you emails or text messages. And that's really where we kind of get the value out of the coffee. That's just economics, and that's why we have to, that's part of the reason why, you see tariffs. It harms the small guys. But Folgers and Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and whatever, right? The rich, they can buy their way out of any of these problems. Tariffs, whatever. Spencer Hakimian will explain that to us this morning at 8:30 a.m. Central Time on the Wake Up America show. But as it is, we're going to go to commercial break. We haven't unlocked the bonus content, which means that you do have to watch commercials. Don't be too angry with me about that. But if we do hit the $75 bonus goal, oh, wait a minute. Oh, you did it. You don't have to watch commercials. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much for that, and we appreciate you all very much for all of your support. Enjoy your bonus content. I'm going to go get Judge Andrew Napolitano. We're going to speak to the judge about these court cases. 753, yes. We're going to speak to Judge Andrew Napolitano about these court cases that Trump is facing and the deportation of a Maryland man who Democrats say President Trump needs to bring back from El Salvador. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show. Click the like button. If you got to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you got to go pee for liberty, and come right back on the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Let's talk about Gen Z, the generation that's supposedly fragile, chronically online, and allergic to daylight. Turns out they might also be leading the quietest, most unexpected anti-smoking revolution in decades. And their weapon of choice? Little minty nicotine pouches that don't even require lungs. Yep, meet Generation Z. Back in the day, smoking behind the high school bleachers was practically a rite of passage. But now? Cigarettes are so out of style, they might as well be fax machines. Youth smoking rates are at record lows. Only about 1.6% of teens smoke anymore. That's barely enough to form a garage band, let alone spark a national crisis. So what happened? Did all those anti-smoking PSAs finally work? Did the kids suddenly discover self-control? Not exactly. Turns out Gen Z found a replacement, nicotine pouches. Zyn, On, Rogue, all those little white packets people pop under their lips like they're microdosing Altoids. These things don't burn, don't smell, and don't turn your lungs into ashtrays. And that, my friends, has the public health panic machine cranking at full speed again. Because if there's one thing bureaucrats and politicians can't stand, it's people making safer choices without their permission. Let's rewind for a second. First, it was the Great Smoking Panic. Justified, to be fair, smoking kills. Then came the Great Vaping Panic. Juul pods were demonized like they were engineered by Satan and Big Mango. Teen vaping is an epidemic, they screamed, right before youth smoking continued to drop anyway. Now it's time for the Great Zyn Panic. Cue the headlines. Teens are using nicotine pouches. What will become of our youth? The horror. We're talking about a product used by maybe 2-3% of teenagers. Meanwhile, actual cigarette use has cratered. But instead of celebrating that win, the Pearl Clutchers have moved on to clutching their organic chamomile tea and warning about the dangers of spearmint-flavored tobacco-free pouches. Now look, I'm not saying nicotine is great for kids. Nobody is saying that. But let's try something radical called context. Because if a nicotine-dependent teenager is reaching for a Zyn pouch instead of a Marlboro Red, that is what sane people call a win. Yet here come the usual suspects acting like these pouches are Trojan horses for a new nicotine apocalypse. Chuck Schumer is out here warning that teens are ditching vapes for Zyn, and instead of responding with a polite, "Good job, kids," we get "ban the flavors, launch an investigation." What's next? Banning cinnamon gum. Here's the real issue. Public health messaging has gotten so binary, so cartoonishly moralistic that it can't handle nuance. According to the experts, nicotine is bad, full stop. No shades of gray, no room for harm reduction, just bad. But let's be honest, a nicotine pouch is not a cigarette. It's not even a vape, it's a pouch. If you told a chain-smoking teenager in 1996 that one day they could quit cigarettes using a product that doesn't involve smoke, flame, or hacking up a lung, they would have kissed you on the mouth. But now, you do that and you're public enemy number one, because it comes in wintergreen. The irony here is that by panicking about Zyn, we're at risk of pushing kids back toward more dangerous alternatives. We've already seen what happens when you take away vapes. They go back to cigs. Great job, everyone. Really nailed it. You want to help kids? Tell the truth. Say nicotine is addictive? Sure. But also say that not all delivery methods are created equal. That switching from smoking to a pouch is a huge step in the right direction. That quitting entirely is the goal. But if they can't do that, harm reduction is still a victory. But no. That kind of honesty doesn't fit on a bumper sticker. It doesn't get government grants. And it sure doesn't help politicians get reelected by pretending to save children from a substance they already mostly stopped using. So here's to Gen Z. They've cut ties with cigarettes. They're rolling their eyes at the moral panic machine. And they've found a cleaner, subtler way to deal with nicotine cravings that doesn't set off a smoke detector. Are pouches perfect? No, but they're better. And if we actually care about outcomes instead of outrage, that should count for something. In the meantime, maybe the public health experts should sit this one out. Go touch grass, drink some herbal tea, and let young people make decisions that are actually improving their lives, even if it comes in a little white pouch. Because in a world full of real problems, hyperventilating over mint-flavored lip pillows is just plain embarrassing. Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at apforlibertyshop.com. Good morning. Rise in freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and that's on the For Liberty Network. There's 4 shows now. Count them 4. We had 3. Now we've got 4. Make sure you check them all out at forlibertynetwork.com. Visit our locals page and sign up to become a monthly supporter. If you love the shows, become a regular member of Peterson's Patriots, and you get on the Peterson Family Christmas card list. One man who will always be on the Peterson Family Christmas card list will be my next guest. He is the host of his own wildly successful podcast, Judging Freedom, which you can download on any of your mobile devices. He writes a weekly column at judgenap.com. He is my paisan, Judge Andrew Napolitano, joining us live here on the Wake Up America show. Good morning, Judge. How are you?
Good morning, Austin. Thank you for that happy and flattering introduction. I'm happy to be your paisan.
Judge, we're talking about immigration in this country, and boy, has it really turned nasty. The whole conversation surrounding it is toxic. So maybe let's just start with what is right and what is true and what is factual and what is correct and what is constitutional and what is legal. That's a big umbrella. But break down for us this story about the man from Maryland who has been disappeared to an El Salvadoran prison. The president's defenders say that he has had a deportation order issued against him already, but the Democrats are saying that he has to be brought back. How should we think about this?
Well, the bottom line is that 13 federal judges, from a low-level immigration court judge to all 9 members of the Supreme Court of the United States, have looked at this case and all have said the same thing. He was improperly deported, and the government needs to do all that it can to bring him back. There's not a single dissent there. The immigration, when he first entered the United States, he did so illegally. And in those days, they gave you a hearing before they deported you. The law is the same, by the way, but the Trump people have been avoiding the hearings because they often don't have evidence against these people. At that hearing, the government claimed, this is in the Biden administration, that he was a member of an MS-13 gang in Chicago, to which he emigrated illegally. The evidence against him consisted of a hoodie sold by the Chicago Bulls basketball team, not evidence of membership in a gang at all. The court found not only was there no evidence of membership in a gang, but that in fact he had escaped El Salvador in order to avoid a gang, which was intimidating him and his family. The court said he's not deportable and granted him permanent resident status. He then moved to Maryland, where he got married to an American woman, had 3 children, lived peacefully, and worked. And one day he was at Home Depot when masked agents picked him up and shipped him to Louisiana. There he was held for 2 or 3 days. While he was there, his lawyers got an order from a federal district court judge in Maryland prohibiting his deportation. At the same time that this was happening, the entire concept of using the Enemy Alien Act to pick people up off the streets just because of their nationality was being litigated before Judge Boasberg in Washington, and he signed an order prohibiting the deportation of anyone under the act. So there's 2 orders prohibiting his deportation. One is to him directly. The other is to all people picked up under the act, which at the time was about 250. In defiance of both of those orders, the government deported him. The government then admitted before the federal district court judge in Maryland he was deported by mistake. The lawyer who made that admission has been placed on administrative leave by the DOJ, for telling the truth in a public courtroom. The judge in Maryland ordered his return. It was appealed to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in Richmond. All 3 judges affirmed the order. That was appealed to the Supreme Court. All 9 justices affirmed the order and said, oh, by the way, before you deport anyone, they're entitled to a hearing. President Trump and the people that work for him have ignored the order, and a federal district court judge is not going to stand for that. If you think presidents can ignore orders, just look at what happened to Richard Nixon when he tried to ignore the order of Judge John Sirica, upheld by the D.C. Circuit and then, of course, by the Supreme Court. So I don't know where this is going to go. I do know that in the first Trump administration, when a similar event occurred, Trump pulled out all the stops to get the person returned, realizing it was a mistake, and the person was returned. This is in 2018 and 2019. But the Trump administration persists in arguing this guy is a gang member and a terrorist, again, for which there is no evidence. And it persists in arguing that it doesn't have to obey court orders because they reflect foreign policy, which is exclusively the domain of the executive branch. The lawlessness of the Trump administration is palpable. Yesterday, I'm getting to the end of this long story. Yesterday, in federal court in Maryland, the judge ordered depositions, that's an examination under oath, but not in the courtroom, of everybody whose fingerprints have been on this, from the lawyers in the courtroom to everybody in the DHS to everybody in the White House who made the determination not to lift a finger to return him. Can the president be deposed? Absolutely. So we'll see where that goes. That's where we are right now.
I mean,
the government has made a mockery of the rule of law and thumbed its nose. In fact, it hasn't thumbed its nose. It's given its middle finger to the judiciary and to the Constitution.
Well, what could possibly even happen, Judge? And you said that there was an incident with Richard Nixon. I mean, tell us a little bit more about the historic precedent here and where you think it could go today.
Well, the precedent is that the president must obey court orders. Trump himself has said, if the courts order me to do something, I'll do it. But you can't accept at face value what he says, because he often says one thing and does the opposite. I mean, Nixon's refusal to turn over the tapes rubbed raw a national crisis. However, when the Supreme Court ordered Nixon to turn over the tapes of the Oval Office, he complied. This resulted in his resignation, but he did the right thing. He, as a lawyer, respected the court. If Trump does not respect the court, I don't know what will happen. The judge normally would order anyone who's using the power of the government to impair the civil liberties of an innocent person to be prosecuted under federal laws that make it a crime to do that. But the prosecuting entity here would have to be the DOJ, which would be in lockstep with the president. So the federal judge in Maryland could order the Attorney General of Maryland to prosecute those who have violated the civil liberties of Mr. Garcia by refusing to lift a finger to return him. Trump and the president of El Salvador made a joke out of this, with Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance laughing like hyenas over the fact that this innocent person is in a hellhole. Marco Rubio should be ashamed of himself. His State Department, not Tony Blinken's, his State Department has characterized this jail as a violator of basic humanitarian principles. And here he is laughing that this person inappropriately is confined there. We are paying the government of El Salvador $1 million. I don't know if you've heard this story anywhere else. $1 million a month to house these people. Trump could very well have said, look, we sent some guy to you by mistake, and it's a big deal here. Send him back. We'll send a jet. We'll send armed guards. Just get him out of the jail, put him on the jet, and he's out of your jurisdiction. Oh no. The president of El Salvador, a puppet of President Xi of China and a puppet of Donald Trump, interesting puppeteer here, said, nothing I can do. What he means is the president hasn't asked me to do anything. Of course he would do it, because $1 million a month to these people is a lot of money, and the friendship of Donald Trump is a valuable political chip.
These are, I mean, but I think we've got a really good point over here with our friends in the chat. Latrell says, I feel like the judiciary, though, is veering right into political questions with their injunctions, though. Do you think that in many ways, the courts might be overstepping?
Oh, my goodness. Those who think the courts might be overstepping and those who rejoice in the plight of this guy will weep bitterly when it happens to someone that they know, when it begins to happen to American citizens. It is profoundly the job of the courts to interpret the law and the Constitution. And if either of the other two branches, executive or legislative, exceed the powers of the Constitution or violate the law, it is the duty of the courts to restrain them.
So Trump is pulling an Andrew Jackson, saying, like, you know, he's made his judgment, let him enforce it, essentially, right?
You know, the Andrew Jackson quote, if he said it, involved a dispute between a Native American tribe and the state of Georgia. And so there was no enforcement sought by the federal government. Jackson had a view of Native Americans which today would be considered very negative and biased, but it was a different era and a different world, and he had fought wars against them, and I understand that. So the statement was not one of, I'm not going to follow what the Supreme Court says, because the Supreme Court didn't order him to do anything. It ordered the state of Georgia to. So his statement was a political statement. But if Trump takes that view, let the court go ahead and enforce that. That will bring a Democratic Congress, which will ruin the last 2 years of his presidency.
It has been concerning seeing the Trump administration going from this hard start with, you know, running 90 miles an hour with the push of the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, and Elon Musk, and some early wins. But they seem to be getting bogged down. And, you know, if you believe rightly so by these judges, then, you know, I can understand why you might feel that way, Judge. But on the economic side of things, right, there were a lot of promises made about prices being lower. Now we're looking down the barrel of a shotgun of tariffs, 254% today, now announced on China. It creates disruption, Judge. The kinds of what, you know, our economist friends might call disequilibrium in planning for corporations and companies that have to invest in the United States. I mean, you are a follower of the School of Austrian Economics, just as I have. You introduced me to many of these concepts. The sort of people aren't going to be able to understand where the pain comes from because of the way the tariffs disperse the costs and centralize the goodies, the benefits, right? I mean, this is, it's a shame because we might get a Democratic Congress ushered in because Republicans failed to live up to the economic promises because they believed a lot of hogwash about central economic planning when it came to tariffs. Would you agree? Judge?
Yeah, all of a sudden, my ability to hear you dropped off. I don't know if it's your end or my end. Well, I agree with everything you're saying, of course. And I hate to sound personal about this, but the president's behavior manifests a fundamental misunderstanding of the economy. I mean, I hope you don't need an antibiotic, because antibiotics, about half of them sold in the United States, are manufactured in China. So they will now cost 2.5 times what they used to cost. I hope the federal government realizes that the jet planes that it buys, the F-35s and the self-named F-47, they're according to the Economist magazine, require parts and components only made in China. So the government may participate in a smuggling scheme in order to get those parts here without paying the tariff by sending them through Vietnam or some country that doesn't have this heavy tariff imposed on it. But Trump obviously doesn't understand what he's doing. He destroyed the shareholder value in trillions of dollars of millions of innocent people who had voted for him, who probably hold their nose at him today. Even the statute that gives him emergency powers when there is a true emergency, defined as a sudden and unexpected event. Obviously, trade imbalance is not a sudden and unexpected event. It's been around since 1934. Does not mention tariffs. This is a self-aggrandized, unilaterally self-imposed, destructive, Stalinistic power that Donald Trump has exercised. And with the exception of Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, the Republicans are gutless, hopeless, spineless about resisting this.
Judge Andrew Napolitano gives it straight. The judge gives it straight. I'm just grateful, Judge, that there's also people like you out there, not just Senator Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, but someone like you who has the guts to talk about the wise ways of the experts like Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell when it comes to economics or trade. Walter Williams, Judge, may his name never be forgotten. I cannot tell you how many times I just think to myself, if we had Walter Williams, because he could go on Rush Limbaugh's show, Judge. Oftentimes,
Yes.
the conservatives are often turned off by our libertarian ideals. And sometimes we libertarians, not you, but sometimes libertarians can be a little bit weird in how they, maybe perhaps autistically sell our ideas in a manner that the American public doesn't find palatable. But in terms of Walter Williams and his ability to sell the ideas of liberty in terms of economics, I mean, second to only Thomas Sowell, I would say, in terms of greatness. But
I think Walter Williams was on Freedom Watch with us, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I remember some crazy incident where the camera shot was too low and it revealed that he had shorts on and flip-flops, even though he had a coat and tie on above his waist. And he gave me hell over this. And then, of course, we kissed and made up.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, Judge. Such a great memory. Thank you for triggering that in me. So many wonderful memories. I mean, Julian Assange and all of the sort of skullduggery we had to do to get that interview set up. I mean, we truly were breaking new ground with Freedom Watch.
Yes.
And obviously, whenever I go back to my intellectual roots, whenever people are like, Austin, where do you know all this stuff? Where did you learn all this? I try and give them a copy of the book that got it started for me, which was A Nation of Sheep, which I pulled out just the other day to introduce one of my employees to your wonderful book. So I hope people will check those out. Judge, who do you have coming up on your incredible and excellent Judging Freedom podcast today?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
I said, who do you have on your coming up on your podcast, Judging Freedom?
Oh, okay. So I have, you should interview this guy. He's fascinating. He comes on with me about 3 times a month. Professor Glenn Beeson of the University of Southeastern Norway is a terrific free market, pro-peace, brilliant explainer of the geopolitics of the European elites. I have my friend Aaron Mate, who's delving into what ICE is doing, that they are condemning ideas and punishing people for ideas. And I have the great ex-CIA agent comes on with me every Wednesday, Phil Giraldi, the one George Bush threw out of the Oval Office, who's explaining the role of the CIA, which is not supposed to have anything whatsoever to do with domestic law enforcement, in helping ICE find people that have the temerity to exercise the freedom of speech in behalf of a Palestinian state, which has been the public policy of the United States since 1948.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, your column this week deals with Easter and the story of Easter. Would you like to share with us a little sneak preview of that?
I analogize the need for freedom with the recognition that a belief in God, an acceptance of first principles, in my case, an acceptance of the divinity of Jesus Christ and his having risen from the dead, frees you from the slavery of sin. And I do my best to intertwine the value of freedom that comes from ridding the soul of sin to the need for freedom in a political society. It's a little deeper column. It won't resonate with all of my viewers, but it will resonate well with a lot of them.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, the host of the Judging Freedom podcast. Read his weekly column at judgenap.com. And of course, never miss a single episode where he appears here every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Central Time on the Wake Up America show. Judge, thank you for standing up for freedom. We appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Austin. A happy Easter and Passover to you and your family. God bless your beautiful family. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Judge. See you next week. Have a wonderful Easter. Happy Easter. Technical difficulties abound. At least you could hear him, but I'm sorry you couldn't see him. My next guest will be here. His name's Spencer Hakimian. I'm going to try and troubleshoot a little bit on the back end. It may go down for like 30 seconds, but it will come back up. Just hang out right where you're at. We'll be right back on the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. All right, folks, let's talk about Gen Z, the generation that's supposedly fragile, chronically online, and allergic to daylight. Turns out they might also be leading the quietest, most unexpected anti-smoking revolution in decades. And their weapon of choice? Little minty nicotine pouches that don't even require lungs. Yep, meet Generation Zin. Back in the day, smoking behind the high school bleachers was practically a rite of passage. But now? Cigarettes are so out of style, they might as well be fax machines. Youth smoking rates are at record lows. Only about 1.6% of teens smoke anymore. That's barely enough to form a garage band, let alone spark a national crisis. So what happened? Did all those anti-smoking PSAs finally work? Did the kids suddenly discover self-control? Not exactly. Turns out Gen Z found a replacement, nicotine pouches. You know, Zyn, On, Rogue, all those little white packets people pop under their lips like they're microdosing Altoids. These things don't burn, don't smell, and don't turn your lungs into ashtrays. And that, my friends, has the public health panic machine cranking at full speed again. Because if there's one thing bureaucrats and politicians can't stand, it's people making safer choices without their permission. Let's rewind for a second. First, it was the Great Smoking Panic. Justified, to be fair, smoking kills. Then came the Great Vaping Panic. Juul pods were demonized like they were engineered by Satan and Big Mango. Teen vaping is an epidemic, they screamed, right before youth smoking continued to drop anyway. Now it's time for the Great Zyn Panic. Cue the headlines. Teens are using nicotine pouches. What will become of our youth? The horror. We're talking about a product used by maybe 2-3% of teenagers. Meanwhile, actual cigarette use has cratered. But instead of celebrating that win, the Pearl Clutchers have moved on to clutching their organic chamomile tea and warning about the dangers of spearmint-flavored tobacco-free pouches. Now look, I'm not saying nicotine is great for kids. Nobody is saying that. But let's try something radical called context. Because if a nicotine-dependent teenager is reaching for a Zyn pouch instead of a Marlboro Red, that is what sane people call a win. Yet here come the usual suspects acting like these pouches are Trojan horses for a new nicotine apocalypse. Chuck Schumer is out here warning that teens are ditching vapes for Zyn, and instead of responding with a polite, "Good job, kids," we get "ban the flavors, launch an investigation." What's next? Banning cinnamon gum. Here's the real issue. Public health messaging has gotten so binary, so cartoonishly moralistic that it can't handle nuance. According to the experts, nicotine is bad. Full stop. No shades of gray. No room for harm reduction. Just bad. But let's be honest. A nicotine pouch is not a cigarette. It's not even a vape. It's a pouch. If you told a chain-smoking teenager in 1996 that one day they could quit cigarettes using a product that doesn't involve smoke, flame, or hacking up a lung, they would have kissed you on the mouth. But now, you do that and you're public enemy number one, because it comes in wintergreen. The irony here is that by panicking about Zyn, we're at risk of pushing kids back toward more dangerous alternatives. We've already seen what happens when you take away vapes. They go back to cigs. Great job, everyone. Really nailed it. You want to help kids? Tell the truth. Say nicotine is addictive? Sure. But also say that not all delivery methods are created equal. That switching from smoking to a pouch is a huge step in the right direction. That quitting entirely is the goal, but if they can't do that, harm reduction is still a victory. But no, that kind of honesty doesn't fit on a bumper sticker. It doesn't get government grants. And it sure doesn't help politicians get reelected by pretending to save children from a substance they already mostly stopped using. So here's to Gen Z. They've cut ties with cigarettes. They're rolling their eyes at the moral panic machine. And they've found a cleaner, subtler way to deal with nicotine cravings that doesn't set off a smoke detector. Are pouches perfect? No, but they're better. And if we actually care about outcomes instead of outrage, that should count for something. In the meantime, maybe the public health experts should sit this one out. Go touch grass, drink some herbal tea, and let young people make decisions that are actually improving their lives, even if it comes in a little white pouch. Because in a world full of real problems, hyperventilating over mint-flavored lip pillows is just plain embarrassing. Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option. Crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner, this blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at apforlibertyshop.com.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascist? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
Who are the suppliers behind Lululemon? Number 1, Xianglong Apparel, who supplies the most yoga suits, and it is also OEM for Fila and Under Armour. Number 2, Hongqisheng Clothing, who produces yoga suits for Lululemon. Lululemon sells this jacket for nearly $100, but here only costs you $6 to $5 with similar fabric and quality. If you want to get in touch with suitable sportswear supplier, contact with me. I'm Rosie from Yiwu, China.
There you go. We just go straight to the supplier. Good morning. Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. We stand for economic freedom and personal liberty. Notice we start with economic freedom. Yeah, President Trump, take the win on tariffs, right? Get some big new free trade deals under your belt while we still can. Right? The disruption that's been going on the last 2 weeks, it will have been worth it if we actually get lower tariffs. I understand. People say, okay, tariffs. They can do all of these wonderful and amazing and miraculous things in the economy. Okay, you can believe that, but I choose to believe, when the administration is saying this, that this is a way to get better deals. And to me, better deals means lower taxes. But then you have this other wing of the Republican Party saying things like what Bernie Sanders might say, oh, it's going to bring back manufacturing, but we're also going to exempt all of the big tech companies, and then we're going to get rid of de minimis exemptions. So we're going to bankrupt all of the poor people, and we're going to consolidate all of the international trade to just a few suppliers at the very top. Jeff Bezos could pay the tariffs, but Austin Peterson and his Wake Up America show, Delicious Coffee, straight from Colombia. Oh no, Austin. You'll never compete with Folgers, or you'll never compete with Dunkin' Donuts. You stay poor. You stay broke, Austin. Don't you dare try and make money off international trade. My next guest knows a thing or two about international trade. His name's Spencer Hakimian. He's the founder of the Tulu Capital Management. He was a Forbes 30 Under 30 is joining us live right now. Good morning, Spencer. Welcome to the Wake Up America show.
Good morning, Austin. Thank you for having me on. Excited to do this.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. You posted a tweet saying, is there anybody out there on the right who's not standing for the economic centralization of power into the White House? I raised my hand. I was like, yes, sir. You know, this lonely voice out here, because I believe that these tariffs are going to do the kind of economic damage now that people are only really going to feel later, and they're going to really be sorry and wish that there was time to reverse course. But a lot of the supply chains, they go away. They just don't come back easily. Break it down for us, Spencer.
So I just want to start by saying, you know, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. I just consider myself an American. I'm a topics person. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't agree, and that's, you know, where I'm at. And I really like how you put it in your intro. If we can get some deals here, and there are some unfair trade practices, I always point to the fact that we don't make any pharmaceuticals in our country, right? That's an emergency. That is a case where, yes, we may have to actually put on some measures that maybe unlibertarian, but we have to have pharmaceutical production in our country, or else what are we going to do if we get into some kind of hot war with China? But also, you know, if we can get Germany to place the same tariff rate on, let's say, Ford that we place on BMW, that would be a win-win for everybody. That's the whole idea of doing trade deals and lowering tariffs. That's what made so much of the prosperity of the post-World War II world that was led by the United States in the first place. So I agree with you on that. And then on the next thing, I think you're really right. Let's go back to Biden's presidency. You know, there was some, you know, after COVID, you know, some of those supply chains were closed and we reopened them quickly. His entire presidency was a mess because of that 6 to 9 month period where supply chains were closed. Is that really what we want to do again? Is it really worth it? If we close these supply chains, they don't open up so easy. There's not an on and off switch on the economy. As we clearly saw a few years ago, that you cannot just click on, click off. You wake up one morning, you're happy. You wake up one morning, you're upset. That's not how it works. So I'm just talking as a concerned American, and it was very interesting to come across you on Twitter.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we got to connect, Spencer, because I am something of a libertarian, very openly so. I consider myself to be proudly a libertarian believer in individualism and limited government. And with that comes a measurement of economic liberty that is doctrinarily, I would say, opposed to government intervention into the behavior of the free market. But I'm not so blind as to say, oh, well, people will say, oh, we never had a free market. Okay, well, that's true, but you have to be careful about how you analyze these things, especially when you're talking about tariffs, because what is socialism? It is central economic planning. It is, you know, also it's nationalization with government seizing production, right? So, of course, if you're talking about drugs, what's fascinating is you'll see a lot of people on the right who will recoil at the idea of socialism in spirit, but they will adopt it in practice. Remember during the pandemic where we had to invoke the National Defense Production Act. I mean, clearly that is just pure fascism. I mean, it is the definition of fascism. The government tells the factory to stop making this, and it tells that to make that, right? It's like you're in war, right? That's what the way COVID was treated. It was as if it was a wartime economy. We spent massive trillions and trillions of dollars. We inflated the hell out of our economy. And the one jewel that the United States of prosperity to give us our resilience was the international trade and the shipments and the desire for other countries to send us their valuable products while we did nothing but digitally create ones and zeros and pass them out around the world in people's bank accounts. I mean, people talk about trade deficits. We really ought to be talking about capital surpluses. Isn't that really what trade deficits actually are? Capital surpluses that we have with other countries?
I mean, you know, when you think about a trade deficit, it goes hand in hand with having a fiscal deficit, as you're alluding to, and or, you know, you are just spending more money as a country than you are actually earning. And this is, Triffin's dilemma. This is the heart of it. This is the heart of what it means that when you become a reserve currency, people are willing to let you spend money on credit, even if you are producing that credit yourself, which is what really printing money is. And that lets you live much better in the short term than you otherwise could have lived. And people tend to really like that. That's a good feeling. Imagine being able to eat food without gaining any weight in the short term. Who would turn down a pie of pizza, right? Who would keep eating broccoli and spinach if you can eat pizza and the same result would happen to you? So that's the course of history for every country. And I know a lot of my Twitter is, I'm just trying to show that, maybe our country, and I love our country. I really do love our country. But in this aspect, are we that different from the ancient Greek or the ancient Persians or the Romans or the Dutch or the British before us or now us? We are following a pretty similar path of spending more money than we don't have, right? We're trying to solve deep-rooted problems domestically by just spending money. And both parties are to blame for this. Every time there's a conflict, we just try and do another stimulus bill, right? We try and distract stuff with another stimulus bill. Just last week, we're talking about bailing out farmers again. Well, why are we talking about bailing out farmers? Because we're putting on a tariff. Why don't we just not put on a tariff in the first?
The whole bailout situation again. Like 2 or 3 weeks ago, as soon as this all began, I said, "You just wait." Bookmark this tweet. They will be talking about subsidizing the industries that will be harmed by these tariffs. And I basically word for word, I can remember that they will subsidize those favored industries. And then what happens, of course, now is that with exemptions being carved out, now we've got to spend a lot of money on lobbyists, because if you want to protect your business, you have to have political connections in order to survive. Because just like we did with COVID on accident to ourselves, how we destroyed supply chains and how we consolidated power into the hands of the few. Tim Cook over at Apple, he can get the sweetheart deal, or maybe he can't because Howard Lutnick changes his mind 24/7. The Navarro-Lutnick duo over there has done more damage to the Trump presidency, in my opinion, as a Trump supporter than anything else. I mean, people don't want MS-13 gang members in their communities. Despite all the bleeding heart liberalism and their talk about due process, Democrats are secretly glad that somebody's stepping up on immigration and getting the border under control. But I'll say this, people are not going to be happy with what happens when the United States can't meet the demand, the absolute demand, because China, what I think that people don't understand, Spencer, and I'd love for you to confirm or deny, China can gladly force its people into pain and they'll take it. Americans aren't going to put up with anything less than 2 TVs, 2 cars and all this kind of stuff. People are, the Trump administration with Navarro and Lutnick, if they don't cut them off, they'll be the Republicans' destruction. They'll be the Republicans' doom. Do you agree with my analysis, my assessment here? Because Bissett makes me feel a little better, but not much. But there's not a lot to look for in terms of stability from the economic team. Your thoughts?
Look, I've been so vocal about Lutnick and Navarro. They have to stop talking. It's not a function of supporting the policy or not supporting the policy. It's pretty clear that you and I both, interesting enough from different perspectives, but we both disagree with this policy. But even if we agreed with the policy, you can't be coming out every 6 hours on Fox Business with a different idea. How are we supposed to operate? Nobody even knows the tariff rate. There was a rumor overnight that we raised the tariff rate on China to 245%. And before the market opened this morning, they're already changing it. No, never mind, it's back to 145%. Even if you 100% agree with everything that they're saying, what is the benefit of all this instability? And no one even knows what they're talking when they say it anymore, because, Lutnick comes on and says one thing, then Hassett says another, then, Leavitt denies everything, and then Navarro says, no, never mind, it's all back on. It's like, it's a whirlwind. And then here's another really important point that I want to make, and you were touching on it. even if we don't have to talk in absolute terms, because nothing in this world is really absolute. Things are, there's gray area and a lot of stuff. But the direction of where we go in a world with tariffs is we go a lot more towards centralized planning economies, right? We go towards the Soviet model economic. I'm not talking about the social. I'm just talking economic, right? I don't want to exaggerate here, but we go more towards the economic failed model of the Soviets of the 80s and the 70s of we tell you what to produce at what price. There's no market signals anymore from pricing. We're going to preferentially reduce the rate the penalties that we charge on some industries, right? This is everything that Ronald Reagan's own party fought for a decade to stop. And this is the legacy.
Well, that's why you saw China posting those things to mock the conservative movement in the United States,
that is a head explode. The Chinese Communist Party posting Ronald Reagan propaganda is a head explosion. That doesn't make sense.
It does make sense if you think that they know what's in their own best interests. I mean, China is looking out for their own best interests. The Trump administration claims they're looking out for our own best interests, but they're doing it in a wrong-headed manner. See, the thing is that you need to be able to tell the people on your side when they're running out of bounds and when, they're not going to be hitting, any touchdowns. There's not going to be any touchdowns if you can't get down the field, because honestly, what's hilarious, you would think the Democrats would be using this as like their moment. And in some ways, they're trying to make hay out of this, and some of them might be. But then you'll have like Elizabeth Warren. You'll have Elizabeth Warren coming out and saying, well, gee, yeah, we need the tariffs, but I mean, it needs to be a little more targeted. If only Elizabeth Warren were in charge, Spencer, you understand. If she were the one laying the tariffs, it wouldn't be chaotic at all. The Democrats would have it nice and it would be orderly. They could centrally plan the society. Is it fascinating to watch both of the Republicans and the Democrats fighting over who's going to be more like Bernie Sanders? Do you find that ironic or hilarious? Because I do.
I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not going to defend them. They're aimless right now. I mean, if I'm a Democrat strategist in DC, right, I'm staying on one message. I'm going on the primetime networks every single night, and I'm saying this dude was elected with a mandate to lower prices. How the hell is this going to lower any prices, right? Even if it somehow doesn't raise prices, is this going to lower prices? Right? This dude was voted in by working class folk to help them afford their groceries more. Is putting a 20% tariff on Mexican tomatoes going to make their groceries any cheaper? So they're a mess. I'm not going to defend them.
It's just fascinating because they're
just want one normal party. But
no, I'm sorry, Spencer. That's not allowed. You must choose.
I know.
You must drink your arsenic or your cyanide. The audience is really loving you this morning, actually. There's not a lot of boos. There's a lot of cheers saying Austin always finds the best guests. That's true. That's a compliment of me, though. And then, of course, this guy is great. AP says Amy J. East, Joni Rankin. They're all really loving it. So, hey, guys, follow Spencer over on X, even though he doesn't follow me. Spencer Hakimian over on X. It's spelled just like you can see it up on your screen right now. Hakimian. He's the founder of Toulouse Capital Management, named as one of Forbes 30 under 30. He's been commenting on all of the tariff tizzy that this country has been driven into. Another indicator of economic health in the United States is our bond market. And one of the things you pointed out that I thought was so interesting when Trump issued the 90-day pause was the night before when he said people were getting a bit yippy. It had to do with our allies started dumping our bonds. What's been going on in the bond market? How does this affect the American people? Could you hear me, Spencer?
Austin, so audio got. Hey, yes, your audio got cut off a little bit. But
Yeah.
I believe I heard the question about what's happening in the bond market.
What's
right?
happening in the bond market because Japan was dumping our bonds?
So look, Besant last night came out and said that there's no evidence that sovereign actors are dumping our bonds, and that can be true, but it could be a little bit misleading because, as an example, Chinese banks, right, are technically in China considered private entities, but they are state-owned enterprises, right? So by all intents, a Chinese bank is another arm of the Chinese Communist Party, right? And they may be selling U.S. bonds. Or as another example, a Japanese hedge fund may be selling American bonds. And right, it doesn't technically count as, let's say, the Bank of Japan or the Japanese government selling bonds. That is still indicative of foreigners selling our bonds. And by the way, when a Japanese hedge fund sells a bond versus the Bank of Japan, the BOJ, the reasons are largely the same. I mean, it's not like there's different reasons for selling. It's a lack of confidence, perspective of lower returns due to expected inflation, right? A fear of getting frozen out of your assets at some point, right? So these are all the same directional thoughts that would cause somebody a foreigner to sell any country's bonds. So I really take the bond market as a signal of a vote of no confidence in the United States right now, unfortunately.
It's a shame too, because the United States is the envy of the world. I hear these comparisons to the rest of the world recently. Why is it that if tariffs are so bad, why does the rest of the world do tariffs, Spencer? Why does the rest of the world do tariffs, Spencer? If there's such a terrible, awful, bad idea, why does the rest of the world do it to us?
Okay, so let's look. We should look at that chart. It charts on my Twitter. All right, the majority of the world is somewhere between 2 and 3%. Right, the majority of the functioning world with good economies, with growing economies that you want to be a part of, whether they're democratic or autocratic, right? But just talking about their economies, right? And obviously, I'd rather live in a democracy than an autocracy, obviously. But they're between 2 and 3%. There's a total myth going around that China somehow charges us 20%. China, why the hell would China do such a thing, right? China is an export economy. Why would they punish people's exports into their own countries and just only get retaliation back on them, right? There are some countries that are charging 10, 11, 12%, but let's name them. It's Argentina, it's Brazil, it's Russia, it's Turkey, it's South Africa, and it's a few other countries. You want to be those countries? Those are the worst economies on this planet, right? There's no growth. There's no real growth in those countries. They have runaway inflation, right? They have a central bank that's literally lost control of all of those currencies. What are those like when's the last time you heard of somebody holding those currencies, right? So, yeah, I mean, yeah, so some people do heroin every day. Should we do that because they're doing? Hey, it's not fair. They're doing heroin. They're having fun in the short term. Should we do it also?
Well, we are libertarians here, Spencer. as long as they're
guys want to do heroin, I'm not gonna.
Hey, well, it's as long as it's not to the children.
Just don't coerce me into doing heroin.
No,
and,
we would never. We would never. No. This is a libertarian show, but it's for consenting adults, and it's all about choice. Spencer, you came to the right neighborhood. I think people here are really enjoying your commentary, and I promised it would be 20 minutes, so it's time for us to wrap it up. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we let you go? Anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you for having me on, and I think we need to expand